Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Hey guys, Mike and John with Coffee and the Bull. Today we've got Jason Garbo with us. He is the victim for this episode. So I know Jason from a couple years ago. We were working together at an agency. He was a great dude then, kind of an okay dude now. He started writing a couple books, and fame goes to people's heads. You know how that goes. It's just downhill from you don't want to meet your heroes. Well, it's kind of where we're at. No, all kidding aside, Jason's a great dude. He reached out to us, kind of in support of the podcast, and we worked out this kind of a team deal where he's got some books and could be entertaining for different people. So it's just kind of a trade off that we got going on right now. So
I got a hat.
Yeah, John got a hat, so hopefully it'll be something he can cover up some teeth. But one of the things that we got going on today with Jason is we're going to be talking about one of his outlets was writing.
Correct.
It wasn't he didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be a fictional author. It was an outlet for stress and things that he had experienced at work. He had a lot of stress with law enforcement, and he did investigations in a realm that we did. Typically a lot of cops don't get to do. Like me and John, our experience has been more on the lower level. With street type stuff. Hey, we'll
introductory
stuff.
We'll do
introductory stuff, traffic stops. Maybe occasional search warrant at a house, things like that. But you have a different approach than a lot of cops do because you were more behind the scenes with the larger investigations and things like that. So if you want to take a moment, kind of let the listeners know a little bit about yourself. You don't have to go into super deep detail, but let them know kind of a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
And then we'll go from there.
So this is my 19th year in law enforcement.
Okay.
And when I first started out in law enforcement, I was in patrol for a couple of years. And after about 2.5 years or so, I joined the narcotics task force in the agency that I worked for at the time. And I ended up spending about 8 years in narcotics with that agency.
I got you.
And then transferred to another agency in narcotics and spent about 1.5 years. That's where I met you, actually.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went into regular CID, which is Criminal Investigations Division for the listeners, where I was a detective, doing homicides and major crimes, anything else that a normal detective does.
Right.
And during that whole time, also starting about in 2009, I was also on SWAT and SRT. And when I was with the DEA task force, I was also asked to be on their SRT team as well. So did a lot of traveling and a lot of high-risk stuff throughout our field division, which is 4 states.
So I know that one of the things that a lot of people they don't realize their experience with law enforcement will be maybe them dealing with cops who pull them over or show up to a car wreck or what they see on TV.
Sure.
And one of the things that we kind of run into a lot is or that we're trying to get a lot of the listeners to understand is, while you see a lot of stuff on TV, the door kicking, and running down bad guys and the pursuits, vehicle pursuits, foot chases, and doing the apprehension work. Like there's a side of it. Don't get me wrong. It's exciting.
Right.
I don't want to say we're adrenaline junkies, but it's a feeling like nothing else. But the downside of that is, there's stress that hits your body. There's between emotions of fear and excitement and everything, all that plays into it.
Right.
Did you with your experience and did you find that you were overly subjected to a lot of stress in that realm?
Yes.
And I think that a lot of listeners, it's going to be. They may not be cops or whatever, and this is not just strictly law enforcement related.
Correct.
Obviously, this applies to guys who, whether they're turning wrenches
Sure.
into plants
Sure.
or doctors on the scalpels. I'm sure they've got stress. Like everybody's got a level of stress that they've got no matter what. We're approaching it from a standpoint of what we're familiar with. And in this case, you working with the doing narcotics. Do you want to delve into that a little bit as far as how you used to do some of those investigations?
Yeah. So it is very stressful, and as far like you said, different aspects of the job carry their own stressors.
Right.
And working narcotics work typically. That's why you see a lot of narcotics agents, at local level. They normally are pulled out within about 2.5, 3 years, and they don't last much longer than that, just because of the burnout and the stress that's involved with it. But I was able to last about 10 years total in narcotics before I decided to transfer and get out of the stress of it. But dealing with confidential informants and part of our aspect of our job is we have to go through a portion of a hostage rescue school, because we are responsible for that confidential informant or the undercover cop, if they're in there doing a deal or whatever. So when we're shadowing them,
I went through one of them schools, and they're pretty intense. I don't know if you had the opportunity to go through one. It is an intense.
It's
not law enforcement, but yes.
But when you've got that kind of stressors you're dealing with, not only having to worry about your life and your team that you're with life, but you're also having to worry about a confidential source or UC.
Right.
At any second, when they're in there doing a deal.
Yeah. Because you're dealing with dangerous people.
Very dangerous.
It's not it's not grandma that you pulled over for a speeding ticket.
No, they're not.
That hey, you can relax a little bit. From the moment you start talking to these people.
No, absolutely. They're not going in there to teach a Sunday school lesson.
Right.
And,
right.
So it's very stressful, and I think the most common thing that we always said was there's no hands on the dope clock, because it's 24/7.
Right.
And that was the other stressor, was you never knew when you're going to get called out, because a load of dope may be coming through. You may have a confidential source call you in the middle of the night, say, hey, we need, this guy's ready. He's a source, and we need to go make this buy. And so that was all the time. And eventually I finally got burned out with it, and I asked my supervisor. I said, I missed everything with my son growing up, and I had a younger daughter at the time, and I said, I don't want to miss everything with her.
Yeah.
So that's when I asked to transfer into regular CID. But I didn't realize that at the agency I was at, the call out was just astronomical.
Just as much.
Just
right.
as much.
Right.
Just
Right.
Different type of call out, dealing with major crimes, and
Just as
shootings
demanding,
and homicides and everything else. But it was just different.
I know. I had one of my friends he was excited to start narcotics, to work in the narcotics division, and I think he had kind of this romanticized view of what it was going to be. Hey, you're going after the big kilos and large loads of dope. It's basically he's going to catch Pablo Escobar by himself type thing. And it was. I talked to him a couple weeks later. He goes, man. He said, and I'm sure you can confirm this. Those CIs that call all the time, they're not always calling when they're sober.
No,
so
they're not.
It'll be 2 or 3 in the morning,
That's
and
right.
they're tweaking balls, man. And and you have to deal with that. And correct me if I'm wrong. The policy is when they call, you have to answer.
Oh yeah. You gotta answer.
you don't get to ignore it, because like you said, you don't know what it's
right?
going
It
to
could be a life or death type thing.
So you go from 3 in the morning sleeping nice and comfortable, and got that good little snooze going on, to all of a sudden you got a tweaker screaming in the phone because some imaginary animals running through his house.
Right.
And that has happened.
So before you settled on writing as kind of like your outlet for
Correct.
Putting it down, were there other outlets you tried to use to relieve that stress or that tension that's built up?
I mean, to a point, I guess being a guy, and married, I would talk some to my wife, and to a point tell her some things. Obviously I don't want to burden her with some of the aspects of our job.
Right.
You don't want to do that, but I just found that compartmentalizing it was just not working. Because we would even have to respond to overdose deaths. At the time,
right.
That's part of being a narcotics agent. So there's that aspect too. Dealing with death, and
Can you? So we've done it. Can you give your definition of, or explanation of what compartmentalization would be to someone who, let's say, isn't in law enforcement, who wants to know what that is? Because that's like we try to make the point that, hey, a lot of what we deal with, is relative to the civilian world. Could you kind of show your explanation of that?
Absolutely. So, the way I kind of compartmentalize it. And I guess it's kind of the way that anybody who's had traumatic events, whether
Right.
even civilians, have traumatic events that happen, and to a point they also compartmentalize in their own way. But the way that I kind of compartmentalized it was, as bad as it sounds, when I would deal with death, I would just not. I would try not to see it as a person.
Right.
And,
Right.
I saw it as a job. I had to get this job done, and the other aspect of it was, this person, whoever they are, they have family, and I want to make whatever the best decision is, to try and give them some sort of closure,
Right.
and in that way it helped me a little bit, in my mind in the healing process of dealing with those particular instances.
Right.
But I guess compartmentalization, just in not seeing as what it really was,
Right.
and then, in the writing that, it was a little different as far as just dealing with the stress of the job, because I actually wrote the first 3 pages of my book I wrote in 2018 when I was still with the DEA task force. And that's actually how I was dealing with the stress at the time. I said, I could write a little bit. I'd written some stuff over the years, nothing that ever got published or anything, just some small, things. And I said, I'm just going to sit down and just put some things on paper that, just to, decompress. And that's how I wrote the first 3 pages of the book. And at that time when I did that, I was like, this is helping. It helped me to do that. And that's not obviously for everybody, but it definitely helped me to put that on paper.
Why do you think that is? You think it's being able to focus your attention to something else other than work? Obviously, at this point,
sure.
I haven't read the
Sure.
first 3 pages. So
Weird.
for those of you who don't know, I gave John a hard time for not reading Jason's book
That we just got.
prior to this. But what made the first 3 pages so therapeutic for you?
So the first 3 pages of the book ended up being about page 20.
Okay.
When I finally sat down a few years later and said I'm going to finish what I started. But they were therapeutic because the first 3 pages I wrote were kind of the beginning of an action sequence, and my books are fiction thrillers. And in doing that, when I sit down to write, and again, everyone's different. Some people can journal, and
Right.
get things out. Some people can just sit down and write poetry and get things out.
I do that.
Don't you lie.
My outlet is fiction, and I guess I guess I have a creative mind to a point, and when I sit down to write, it kind of puts me in a total different place.
Right.
A lot of people ask me, do you do a timeline, when you sit down and write, or, do you do a time wheel? A lot of people do what's called a time wheel for all their characters to know what's going on. But I don't, and that's part of I believe, the therapy portion of writing for me, because I don't know what's going to happen next. It puts me in that, that
You're just like the reader. You're like, surprise.
It seriously is.
I love
that.
that.
I don't know what's going to happen next.
I love that.
Start writing, so.
So I have a question, and don't feel like you have to go too far in depth with it. You brought up that you didn't go in depth with your significant other on some of the stuff that was weighing on you.
Sure.
And this is a conversation that Mike and I have had several times, that it's not that part of it is you don't want to burden them, but the other part of it is for them to understand the complexity of what you're going through.
Correct.
You'd have to go farther in depth and almost open a window.
Yeah, and that's
that you don't want them to see
exactly,
through.
and that's a window. I wouldn't want them to see. See
Right,
into.
right.
But yes, you're right. I have a wonderful wife. She's always been completely understanding about my job and my work. She knew when I went into narcotics that I wouldn't be home a lot.
Right.
She would be basically a single mom there for a lot of the events my kids were going to, and things like that. I'd have to leave in the middle of or whatever.
Right.
But she did know, very limited things that were going on.
So, did you ever try to reach out? And I'm specifically asking this question on purpose. Did you ever reach out to anybody else you worked with about any of the stressors or things that were bothering you?
I don't know about reached out, but we had discussions. Yes, I guess in a way. One of the guys I work with, I've had several partners, that I say partners, ones that I rode with or were super close with, that we did day-to-day interactions in narcotics.
Right.
Call your partner, and there was one in particular when I first started that he and I would definitely confide in that sort of stuff. That the stresses of it, and that did help. It helped to talk about it because that person understood. And you could
Right.
talk about anything because they've seen the same thing you've seen.
They're on the ugly side of the world with you. So that's one of the things that Mike and I bring up often is that there's a level that your spouse can bring to the table, but there's another level that your spouse can never bring to that table, not because they're less of a person or because
That's correct.
they're not at that level. It's just that they don't understand it, and you don't want them to.
No, and not just that. I mean, even if you did divulge, something like that was horrible, and it happened, it still wouldn't be the same because they hadn't walked that path.
Right.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things, because obviously I haven't worked in narcotics. My bit of us interacting with each other was more of an assistant level. Because I was attached to narcotics, but didn't actually do narcotics work or investigations. But I know that there's been times where I've divulged, to my wife, the different scenes that been on or whatever, whether it be a murder scene or whatever, and have to explain to her, because she sees it when you walk when you walk in the house, they know what's going on.
Immediately.
They see it on in your attitude, and I would explain it to her. And nothing against her, but she didn't know how to respond to it.
Right.
And it's so yeah. She got to experience. She got to be educated on what I was going through, but had no idea as far as how to approach. And I don't hold that against her. She meant well, but she just didn't know what to do. And so one of the things that we've talked about is when you get that, whether it be a friend or a coworker who you're very in this case, your coworker was probably going to be your friend because y'all are in a team setting,
Right.
Exactly.
They were able to approach it from a whole different standpoint. And sometimes it's, hey, you need to suck it up. Sometimes it's, hey, look, we
in
can,
the moment,
we can take
suck
a
it up.
moment type thing, because I know me and John's had the thing where it's like, we'll be on the scene like, not right now, but later.
Right.
We're linking up,
Right.
We're going to need to have a discussion, and I think for us, having that person, in this case, it's always been a guy lately.
Right.
It's having that guy that you can confide in makes a big deal.
Absolutely.
As far as being able to move on. What was you laughing at? Mm-hmm. You being immature.
I am.
Immature.
I am. No, so the reason it was important is in previous episodes we've discussed about his. I know his indicator is, hey, you got a minute, and so it's something that we're going to get into later on in other episodes. Kind of the importance of men who come home and they have a good spouse or a decent spouse that can tell when something's not right.
Absolutely.
And when she tries to address it, because we as guys, we don't want to either A, burden her with the problem, or B, we don't want to have to explain the problem.
Right.
We then we get frustrated, because that's where the whole argument of what's wrong, and you're like, nothing, don't worry about it.
Right.
And you want to move on, and it becomes an argument. And so that's why I brought it up, so that
Absolutely.
when we get into it later down the road, we can help guys and their wives in those situations.
Yeah, 'cause they want to know, that's just part of being a spouse. They want to help you and console you or whatever's
Right.
going on, and it's just sometimes that can't happen.
Right.
But
And
it can.
it's hard for people when you don't understand. Something's wrong, but you don't understand.
No.
I equate it to fixing a car. You know the car's not running right.
Right.
And you want to get in there, you want to fix it, but you're like, I don't even know where to start.
It's making a noise.
Right. Like,
My wife tells me, my car's making a weird noise. I'm not a mechanic. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I can change a battery. I can change oil. Maybe an alternator or two. But outside of that,
it's weird because I have these same conversations with you. What's up? Besides, it's not running.
Yep.
What's it doing? Not running. I'll tell you that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
So what brought you to the point that you decided to write the 3 pages?
So,
was there an event or something that transpired?
Again, I was still attached to the DEA SRT, and we were doing a lot. We were going a lot of different places, getting duty orders, different states and stuff like that to work. And I guess, and y'all been there, things culminate, after a
Right,
while,
right.
it kind of comes to a head. And early on in my career, probably the part that it's always affected me the most, after I've been in law enforcement about a year, I actually was asked to be on the dive team at the sheriff's office, which was also a recovery team, basically is what it was.
Like going underwater?
Yeah. And so
In South Louisiana?
yeah, the agency I worked with had a lot of rivers through that parish. And of course, it's all black water. In any water, for the most part, if you get about 10 feet down, and especially in
Like
this region,
visibility is
it's
not gonna
black.
be there,
It is
right.
black
Right.
water. You can't see anything. And I think during my 4 years on that team, we recovered, I believe, 7 bodies, and it puts a different spin on it. Whenever you have to feel for a body and that sort of thing, and
Because you're blind feeling.
yeah, you're
and
blind feeling, and it affects you different.
Yeah.
And especially some of them were kids and
Right.
Right.
Well, I was going to
stuff
say
like
that is typically it's people who aren't good swimmers, so it's
Right.
Right.
kids or something,
and
something like that.
that sort of thing. That's probably, out of everything that I've seen and been involved with over the years, that's probably affected me the most. And I guess everything just culminated to that point, and I felt writing was a way to maybe help that, and it
Right.
and it has it did then, and and I was finally able to get to a job now where I can have a little more time on my hands and not get called out all the time, and write these books. It has definitely been therapeutic for me. So
Right.
Question. What do you think would be worse? Getting attacked by an alligator or getting attacked by a shark in the water?
Whew. Both of them have really bad teeth.
Yep. Yeah, I don't. But
I would think the alligator.
I think the alligator would be worse because then you get a spin.
Yeah, they roll with
Like,
you.
Yeah,
imagine being you're underwater, you're obviously in a lot of pain, and now you're dizzy.
okay, I'm with you on that one because the alligator wants to drown you. The shark just wants to chomp you into pieces.
Yeah, true.
So part of you may not get ate.
Right.
You may just end up on the bottom. But when you said the water was black, I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, can't see.
Like,
Yeah.
did you ever accidentally feel an alligator?
No, I didn't do that, but I did. We had some really good equipment. We had some grants that we were able to get, and had some really good equipment, like full face masks. We weren't just using them. We could talk.
Yeah, so you could just see
radios.
the black wall. of
Right,
water.
You could.
right.
You're not going to see
Yeah.
anything else, but you just
Yes.
see.
And you could
I can
talk
see
and-
that I can't see anything.
Right.
Right.
I can tell everybody I can't
Yeah.
see anything.
Yeah, and I actually developed, claustrophobia.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't do it anymore. After 4 years and dealing with black water, I would go down and
So,
it'd freak me out.
I think that's always interesting because I didn't do underwater. I didn't do scuba. I did for a while when I was working in one of the refineries. It was a Mexican floor plant in St. Gabriel. They make R134A refrigerant. Well, one of the byproducts that one of the things that they've got across the entire plant is an acid base that you can't get on your skin. So everything you do is in a SCBA mask or
Oh,
whatever.
wow. Yeah.
And so I remember I had to climb inside of a vessel to
Sure.
clean some of the wall off with a grinder. And so they put me on this mask, and it's got a hose run to it, so you hear the whole
Right,
time,
yeah.
And I've got this on, and I didn't realize I was claustrophobic
Right.
until I've got that on my face. So you're not breathing right because it's not your regular breathing pattern.
Right.
And then I had to put a hood and one of those chemical suits on my body. So my feet are duct taped to rubber boots. I've got these big gloves duct taped to my hands, so you can't feel anything either. And so I'm holding this grinder and I'm doing my thing or whatever. Well, all the flakes are hitting the mask or the hood, and so the plastic thing that I'm trying to see through is slowly deteriorating. In addition to the
true.
mask
Yeah.
that is on my face has condensation building up on it from me breathing and start, because you're also working and sweating and everything else. And so when it come time for me to get out, like when I say my mind was not in a good space,
No, it,
like
I know what
it
you
was,
mean. I know what you're
get
talking
me
about.
out of this thing now.
Full panic.
And,
Full panic.
and
I'm literally
the-
laughing at
the,
this.
The person who was they call it hold watch, to help you when if there was an issue
Sure.
or whatever, they help you get out. He took a break and went to the bathroom. So
Oh,
I come out
no.
of this thing expecting somebody to be there, and I can't see. And I'm not breathing right. Look, I lost my ever-loving mind.
Yeah.
So no,
it'll
I
do
couldn't.
it.
I did that not underwater. You ain't adding water.
Well,
You
it
ain't adding
affected
that
me.
element to
It
it.
affected me so bad that I got out off the dive team in 2012, and then in 2017, DEA sent me to Quantico to Clan Lab school, and part of that school is you have to get test fitted, for SBCA and all that stuff, where they put the stuff. Anyway, full kit and all that, and I mean, I had to like calm myself down when I was in that suit, the Tyvek suit, and they put the mask on and all that, because I was having flashbacks of, being underwater in that black water, because everything's just right there in front of you.
Oof.
And that's the kind of effect it had on me back then.
Right.
So.
Nope, you can take that.
No,
They
no
ain't
part of
gonna
that.
Pay me enough to do that. Jump in some of these rivers.
No, you lost me the minute you said get in the water. Like,
Right.
nope. There's been plenty of times that we've gone out to something and it was swampy, and I was like, nope, ain't gonna happen.
Right. How can I get snake bit?
Right.
There's
So all right. So obviously
you got the wrong Irwin.
Right. Obviously, there's things that and it gets kind of beat with a dead horse in the law enforcement realm of, hey, this is tragic. This is something that is just not. It's not right. We don't want to talk about it or whatever. So people understand that aspect of it. But there's also the other side of the coin is you do get the fun interviews. You do get call outs where it's we get addicted to the excitement of not knowing, like you can't make this stuff up type thing,
Right,
or whatever,
right. That's my favorite. That's what did you say? It was you got front row seats to the greatest shit show on earth.
I don't know. It was
That is true.
it's interesting because I always enjoy calling, like, bro, you're not going to believe what we've been on. And for one of the listeners, if you want to tell, evidently there's an interview that I wasn't aware of. That it was an incident where a business that got burglarized in the middle of the night.
And I believe both of y'all were out on it.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that
I
the
don't
math.
think John was there. The
So
bad
mean
guy
to
went
me.
to jail, so I
Just-
doubt John had a hand in that. But
This guy.
Yeah. So I, again, like you said, sometimes there are some, not some. There's a lot of comical moments, dealing with the public. And I was a regular detective, and I called about 2:00 in the morning that a business had been broken into there in the city in which Robert.
right.
And so when I got there, I think you might have been there. I don't remember. Somebody stood by with me, and I took my photos. And
I know I stayed there for quite a while.
gathered my evidence. Somebody had busted through the glass, the side glass door, and there was glass everywhere, and there was blood droplets everywhere, and on the counter. And it was odd because nothing was taken.
Right. Right.
The only thing that was really disturbed was the water cooler in the break room. That was really the only thing that was disturbed. So I did my DNA collection on the blood spots and collected a cup or two, and
Just need something to drink.
yeah. Well, that's that goes into it. So whenever I think while we were there, patrol apprehended the subject.
Right.
And anyway, they said they were en route with him because the person had some lacerations on him to the hospital. So I left when I finished up collecting the evidence and photos and all that. I left the scene and went to the hospital to try and speak to the person. And when I got there, I walked into the emergency room, and I asked the nurse where this person was, and she directed me down to the room. And of course, the door was closed. And it started when I opened the door, because when I opened the door to this room in the emergency room,
The smell.
I thought it was a joke, because I thought it was Post Malone sitting in the bed looking back at me, because he looked identical to Post Malone. And I actually stopped and kind of looked around like, this is crazy, because he had the same tattoos and the hair, and it looked just like him. So after my mind finally resolved that.
Just to be clear, we did not arrest Post Malone.
Yeah, we didn't.
Facts.
It
Facts.
Please
Did
don't
not
send
have-
your legal
My
team
mind-
after us.
my
We're
mind
never
fin-
inviting this dude on our show again. He could have been like, hey, we're about to get sued by a celebrity.
Right.
My
right.
mind finally resolved that it wasn't him, but very very similar in look. So
I'm just impressed he knew who he was.
Oh my God.
That's good.
so I sat down and I started my recorder and told the guy who I was, and the first thing out of his mouth was, and his eyes were all wide, and he said, man, he said, is everybody okay? And I said, yeah, you know, everybody, as far as I know, everybody's good. And he's like, man, I'm glad. He said, because that was terrible. And I'm like, okay, I'm not exactly sure what he's about to tell me, you know. And I said, well, tell me what happened. How did you get here tonight? You know, tell me what the deal is. And he said, man, he said, I was driving a truck from Texas up to New York. And he said, I was going down the interstate. And he said, all of a sudden, he said, I started hearing these jets. And he said, these jets were flying over. He said, and they were dropping nuclear bombs all down the interstate. And he said, I just had to get out of the interstate, you know, and seek for cover. He said, so I pulled off the first interstate, you know, bless you, the first road I found. And he said, I jumped out of my truck, and he said, I ran around the truck for a minute, and they were still dropping the bombs. And he said, I ran to the nearest building and busted the window and went inside. And he said, I was really thirsty, so I drank the water. And he said, now I'm here. So
Had no clue what he was doing.
No clue.
Meth is a hell of a drug.
Right.
Clue.
That's where my brain went. I was like, you messed that one up. Let's
Yeah.
So, all right.
So that's the end of the story.
I did not know that. I did
Yeah.
not. I just thought it was your standard. You know,
standard burglary.
hey, I was
Yeah.
looking for something, and you know,
Yeah.
I think all that was in there because they were still setting up the showroom for that
They
business.
were.
Yeah.
I think all that was in there was just a bunch of heavy chains. So that,
Yeah.
I just marked it up to he didn't want to carry something heavy out of there. You
Right.
know? So look, let's shift gears a little bit. Tell us about your two books. You got Hammerhead and Cobalt.
Yes.
Give us a walkthrough of your books.
So Hammerhead is the first book in the series. It's a series all centered around an FBI agent by the name of Nick Bradshaw.
Okay.
And the first book, Hammerhead, and it's named after an operation called Hammerhead.
Okay.
And
Been a lot cooler if it was named after a shark.
right. so it's funny because of the political atmosphere that we're in now. Because I wrote this, I started writing it, several years ago, but I finished it 2 years ago, and now here we are. But it's about generally about the president, getting tired of fentanyl and heroin coming across the southern border. And he ends up sending special operations south of the border to take care of business. And in doing so, they run into some major problems trying to get back. Everything went fine with the operation, the initial operation, but then on their way back, they run into some major problems. And that's where Nick Bradshaw and some guys with the Special Activities Division of the CIA come into play. And it's action-packed.
So I know you looked up to me in the little bit of time we spent time together. Am I the basis of your main character? I feel like that's what's going on.
Yeah,
No.
It's based off you.
Yeah, I thought so.
So yeah, and it's again this about the first 30 pages of it are character world building, and but from then on it's action packed to the end.
Yeah,
and it deals with a lot of aspects of law enforcement and things that people in our world would understand. But I also have it. It's in layman's terms where people can understand what's going on.
Right. So it's a cop book that you ain't got to be a cop to understand.
Correct.
So this is books 1 and 2. Is there 3 coming out?
There is. I'm right at 30,000 pages. I mean, 30,000.
Wow. I was like, wow,
30,000.
that's a hell
you're
of a book.
overestimating how much I'm about to read.
Right. Oh. So
30,000
War and
words.
Peace,
You lost me a couple pages ago.
30,000 words, about 90 pages
Right.
into the third
Okay.
one, and it's called Frontera.
Okay.
And,
Gotcha.
It kind of brings everything back to the U.S. and back across the border again, but more of a, without giving too much away, it's more of a terrorist.
Okay.
So this is the book that I come in. Got it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's where you're the main character in that one.
You're welcome.
So,
It's the better looking character. Got it.
The fourth one can be Coffee and the Bull.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we'll go with.
Yeah.
But so now that you've got obviously the first one you were excited about publishing, the second one you're still riding that high. Do you find it still staying therapeutic, or do you think it's becoming a little bit more work?
No. I mean, no. I don't, because I don't rely on it for income or anything like that. And I mean, I don't expect that. I really enjoy writing. and the therapeutic part of it is sitting down, like I said earlier, and being able to dive off into that world,
Right.
And totally immerse myself,
Right.
because I don't have, a whiteboard with all this stuff on it saying this is what's going to happen next, and that's not fun to me.
Are you making fun of us for our whiteboard?
No, I did see it up there.
Okay.
No. So it just wouldn't be fun for me. A lot of writers, and I'm not down in that, a lot of writers, have that,
Right.
and that's the way that they think. It's just the way that I think, and the way that, being therapeutic for me as a writer, that's just the way I do it.
Right.
When you started writing, was the goal to become published, or was this just an outlet at the time?
No. So as I said, when I first wrote the first 3 pages, it was literally that. It was just a kind of a de-stressor, to put some stuff on paper and
Take it out of here and put it there.
Put it on paper, get my mind in another place, and do that. And I really didn't have that, as an outcome that I was going to be
Right.
published. And then when I finally got a job about 3 years ago, which was more of a desk job, I was like, I'm going to sit down and really start putting some words on paper. And because, you think about that stuff, it's never going to go away.
Right.
And the other thing, dealing with that sort of stuff is, I think a lot of people who deal with traumatic events, think they should always keep it in the back of their mind and
Right.
not bring it up or think about it, stuff like that. But I think, I think it's okay. It's okay
Right.
to talk about it. It's okay to put some of those stressors out through paper or whatever.
So we had talked several times about how a lot of times there's this misconception that like, hey, you've been through something bad, and I'm not talking about law enforcement or combat vets, just your regular guys, whether it be a dad taking his kids to school, getting a car wreck or whatever, and somebody being injured. Like, we always take and we compare ourselves to other people.
Sure.
Because it's like, hey,
Right.
why is this bothering me when this guy's got this going on, and it's his cards have been dealt so much worse than mine. So why am I going to complain to somebody about it? It's not necessarily complaining. It's just talking about it. It's trying to get it off of your chest.
It is.
I know that in 2020 I had to go see a therapist. It was a fit for duty type thing.
Right.
And she had told me, she said, look, it was not a good experience. I'll put it that way. It's kind of like going to the doctor.
Terrible. It was a
Go
terrible
to the doctor
experience.
and they're like, hey, do you smoke? A little bit, like I smoke cigars or whatever. Do you
Sure,
drink?
sure.
I was a cop. I was drinking like a fish at the time. And I wasn't exercising. I was eating fast food. I wasn't sleeping right because I was on night
Typical
shift.
police, right?
Like, there was nothing good about everything she wanted to check on the list. I was failing. And I was failing it miserably. And she was talking to me. She said, look, what type of hobbies do you have? I'm like, I don't know if you've been listening to this interview that you've had with me, but I work nights, and then I had a second job. I was had my own little construction business at the time. So I was like, I don't have time for a hobby. And I was like, on top of that, if I did, like the way my bank account was set up, I was not going to afford going to a golf course,
Sure.
or anything like that. And so she's like, well, look, you went to college, and it was surprised some people who know me that don't really know me is I have an English major. I went to college, majored in language and literature. And so she's like, well, look, do you like to write? I said, yeah, I like to write. Like, I like to write, fictional stuff or whatever. And she's like, well, why don't you do that? And I took that advice as like, you don't know what you're talking about. I know. I'll do me. You do you. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So I didn't do anything with it. And then just recently, a year and a half ago, I kind of started putting kind of the same thing, putting words on paper.
Yeah.
And I don't have 2 books coming out of it yet. Mine's a little bit different.
Still in the coloring phases.
Right.
Yeah, still. I'm coloring the pictures in.
So do you find it helpful?
So I find it helpful until I start getting critical of myself. Until I start.
He is the only one that's critical of himself.
But I found it helpful in just kind of escaping a little bit. Because
Sure.
it's 100%. It's a Bigfoot novel of all things. And so immediately some people are like, but it's. None of it's real, and so obviously you're escaping way off into no man's land, and you can kind of do whatever you want. You don't have to answer to anybody with it. But I don't know that it'll ever be a published
Sure it will.
work or whatever.
The only person that
But
is
oh
holding
no,
you back
we're not
is
starting
you.
that. We're not starting that.
Yeah, I'm with him on this one.
But I do find it interesting that something as simple as that, because honestly, a lot of guys have very creative imaginations. And we're always. I find that a lot of guys are fascinated with series like the Nick Bradshaw series, or Tom Clancy with Jack Reacher and all these other different things, and all the way down to werewolves and zombies and horror flicks.
I love
So
zombies.
the imagination is there, and it's something as simple as just grabbing a laptop or the iPad and just typing something or writing it.
Absolutely.
Heaven forbid, check this out, kids. Grab that pen and that piece of paper,
Right.
and just start
What is
handwriting
that?
that stuff. Handwriting it down on the paper.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that you used it as they. Did you have anybody instruct you to do that?
Mm-mm.
See,
No.
you kind of did it on your own, whereas I had to have technically a doctor tell me to do it. I didn't listen in any more than I do a health doctor.
Sure.
But I do. I find it interesting that it's an approved route, and you did it without.
And,
without
the thing is, you don't, just like you said, you don't have to publish anything.
Right.
If somebody's having problems, with something traumatic or anything in their life like that, they don't have to publish it all. You can put it on paper and you can throw it away or
Right.
Light it on
burn
fire
it,
in the backyard.
Yeah, whatever. But getting it out sometimes, just by either typing it or writing it or whatever, getting it out of your mind and onto something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something about it is therapeutic,
Right.
And I can't describe it, but
So through the course of everything, we're looking at a 19-year career and everything else, and extremely different types of stresses in different situations. Was the opportunity for say counseling or therapy ever like laid out in front of you in a positive way of like hey, if you want to try this out, it's right here, you can just pick this up?
So, yes and no. Not just in my face, like in your face, like here, this is always available to you if you need it.
Right.
The only time that I can say that it was really brought up and it was offered, was at one of the OISs I was involved with. They offered it then,
Right.
and I mean, I was good, at least I thought it was,
Right,
most
right.
of us do. And, again, we're going back to the, being the type A personality cop, I don't need to talk to a therapist, what do I need that for? But looking back, I mean, I think honestly, it doesn't hurt
Right.
if it's offered to you every time to take
That's
it.
that's been kind of our stance is in the beginning oh, I'm good, I don't need any of this,
Right.
whatever.
Machismo.
But I think the longer you stay in this realm is more of, and no, if it's available and it can be beneficial to you, take advantage of
Absolutely.
that.
Yep.
It's I'm starting to see more of a shift, and it may be that I'm hanging out with guys who have been doing this longer than just the rookie trying to
Sure.
burn up stats.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
I definitely see a larger shift into getting some type of mental health.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the importance of it is sometimes sitting down and talking to a friend, or sitting down and talking to a therapist, or in this case writing a novel.
Right.
It's all about finding the appropriate outlet
It is.
for your
It
stressors,
is.
and not being the guy that sits at home and fuels the fire instead of
Right.
getting a nice smother of the fire
Because
going.
a lot of times those demons come at you, whenever
Right.
you're by yourself,
Right.
or you're just sitting there thinking, or whatever, and those doors that you've compartmentalized get open.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
those things come out, and it's if you have that ability to be able to have an outlet of some sort, it's
Right.
always better than the alternative in some cases.
Right. The
yeah.
final checkout.
And I can't sit here and say that, my faith in religion also didn't have, a major role
Right.
in that, and me being able to cope with some of the things throughout my career, it'd be absurd for me to sit here and say that it wasn't. But those, my religion and faith coupled with, a definite outlet that I was able to figure out, have allowed me to get to where, I'm mentally, I think, I'm good.
Yeah.
And I'm able to get through those things daily or weekly or whenever those things come up.
Fantastic. So let's we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up a little bit, but for the listener who he's like, hey, I'm on my way home. I'm tired of listening to these two guys, but I am interested in Jason's book. How can they find your book, or where can they go to listen to it, or whatever?
So it's all through Amazon. You can order it through Amazon on audiobook, paperback, hardback, and ebook.
Okay.
Both of them right now. Frontera will be out. I'm hoping Frontera will be completed midsummer and out by late summer. So it'll be in those same formats at that point. And you can pick them up at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and places like that.
Gotcha.
But generally you have to order it, but they do have them.
What about the hats?
So...
Or is that special hats?
Those are special hats for guys
okay.
like you.
Okay. So for the
can't have
appropriate
one.
donation, we can, I'm just kidding.
There's only a select few people on earth that have that hat.
So we'll definitely hold on to it.
I'm excited about that.
I do want to say I really appreciate y'all having me on.
Yeah,
here.
no, not a problem. Not a problem at all. So, guys, if as you, we want to say thank y'all for taking a moment and listen to this and listen to Jason kind of tell some stories. Give his book a chance. Go online, buy it on Amazon. It's not that expensive. Y'all spend money on dumber things day in and day out. DoorDash.
I do.
So
he's talking about me.
So take and show him some love. Buy his book. Maybe send him a message. He might send you a hat. We don't know. But in the meantime, if you like this episode, or you like this topic, or have any ideas for other topics, shoot us an email. It's coffeeandthebull@yahoo.com. We're definitely more than happy to answer any questions or include your thoughts or whatever in the next episode. So unless John,
send me a picture of you at Barnes & Noble buying his book, and I will return you a gift. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
it's probably a wave. He's broke.
You're welcome.
Guys, in the meantime, y'all take it easy. Toodaloo.
So stupid with the toodle, dude.